I would presume that Hank Green's audience are what we would describe as default liberal to leftist. And that is, most people who don't pay attention to the news or know what's going on probably fall into the default liberal camp. I think that's how Andrew Breitbart described it. Well, Hank Green was shocked once again to discover that just shy of half of his audience wants humans not to exist. In a poll, he said, which universe is the better one? One with humans? One without humans? 66,000 votes. I, of course, voted for the one with humans because I'm human and I think humans are pretty good. 41.2% said one without humans. Hank Green responded, I keep trying to do other versions of this poll thinking that there's something wrong with the question. But it really does seem like 40% of you think humans shouldn't exist. And I find that so deeply outside of my perspective that I need to do a lot of thinking. Yes, finally, perhaps some of these people may realize it's a cult. It's a death cult and they want you dead. Don't believe me? Ladies and gentlemen, I give you, from Breitbart.com, euthanasia for terminally ill children to be legalized in the Netherlands. Now, of course, what they're saying is, well, but they're terminally ill. They're terminally ill. So who cares if we kill them? I'm sorry, euthanize them. Euthanize. You see, this is how it began. It started with the argument that we should have medical assistance in dying, or MAID, as they describe it. So, Hank, let me lay it down for you. You see, back in the day, there was a guy named Dr. Kevorkian, and he would go to people who were on their last breath, and he would say, let me ease you in to the other side. And it was a big controversy. Should we allow assisted suicide? The argument surrounded those who were already dying and nothing could be done. We advanced from there. At that point, we ended up with some of these people who seemingly nothing could be done, but in reality, some things could be done, but we kind of just didn't want to do it. There's a woman in Canada. She appeared in some commercials where she said that if she can't get health care, she would prefer to have death care because she is suffering. Well, the reality is a treatment did exist for her, but they just didn't want to give it to her. So her life sucked. And because her life sucked, she said, well, if you're not going to help me, then why not die? The way it was framed in the media and with these commercials was that there was nothing that could be done to help this woman. And so the only thing available to her was a dignified death of her choosing, when in reality, she was just denied the treatment that she did need. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think we can just give everyone every single treatment. Sometimes there's genetic diseases or other diseases that require massive resources to cure, and we just can't take 1 million people's labor to save one person. That's the harsh reality of existence. But you see, the point was, initially we said, we'll try to keep you alive at all costs. And now it's like, well, if you're going to die anyway, but we're even beyond that to where it's like, we're not going to try that hard. Maybe you should just... There was one story about, I think, like a military veteran who needed some kind of like a wheelchair or something. And they said, well, we can't give you that, even though they're readily available. But have you considered medical assistance in dying? And this is the point. So what are we seeing right now? Well, in New York, there's a hearing about crime, and the Democrats are defending the crime. In Chicago, we have something called the teen takeover, where a whole bunch of teenagers rampaged through the city and apparently are still going to keep doing it. And a couple people got shot, windows were smashed, cars set on fire. And once again, the newly elected leftist Democrat mayor is defending the criminals. It's because they don't want you to be alive. Isn't it obvious? They complain about climate change. They say there's too many people. They encourage you to abort your children, and they want you currently to sterilize your kids or yourself. So when I see a poll like the one that Hank Green put up, and 41.2% of his audience say that a universe without humans is better, I'm not surprised at all. But Hank Green is. Now, I don't want to say that it's all just definitively leftists who are saying humans shouldn't exist. I don't know. I just really doubt conservatives, who tend to be more moralist and religious, would make the argument. In fact, if you scroll through, you can see several of the people responding to this saying you need to understand X, Y, or Z. They have pronouns in their bios. So welcome to the current state of existence. It is a death cult. Democrats are actively defending the violent crime. Rep. Hank Johnson accuses relatives of crime victims of being props in a MAGA Broadway production. Johnson slams Republicans as jackbooted thugs. They don't want you alive. Not all of them, just enough of them. Enough of them to where if a Democrat wants to get elected, they have to pander to these groups. So they have to offer up just enough. The teen takeover in Chicago, I covered it at 1 p.m. It's insane. It's absolutely downright shocking to see the violence, the extremism, but there's no real purpose behind the riots. They're just, I don't know, there's just no society. There's complete and total breakdown of social order. The police don't do anything. They don't want to do anything. The cops know that giving you a ticket is easier than arresting someone in a mass riot. And with hundreds to thousands of these people, of these teenagers rampaging through the city, the police can't do anything to stop it. Nothing. Nor do they really want to. I think this was always the intended position. And as such, why would Democrats speak up in defense of crime victims? So I'll tell you, my friends, you've been warned by me, by many others, that it's going to get worse. And perhaps getting out of the city is the best thing you can do. Take a look at this. I want to play for you this statement. I hope Hank Green sees this. I think Hank is a good dude. I think he wrote some books. I hope he sees this. I hope he sees this video of Jose Alba, which I'm going to play for you right now.
Just like any other day. I took pride in the hard work I put in every day at the store to earn my own money and support myself and my family. That is when I encountered a true and real threat to my life. After I simply told a woman that she could not have potato chips because her payment was declined. I was face to face with her boyfriend, who seemed ready to kill me. He attacked me violently, threw me around the store. The woman stabbed me herself. I truly believed they were there to kill me. So faced with this, I did what I knew I had to do to save my life. What the law allows me to do to save my life. I stabbed that man in self-defense. But when the police came, even though I was injured myself, I was placed under arrest. I was taken to jail. When I came before the judge, the prosecutor said I was being charged with murder in the second degree. They asked for bail, even though so many people are being let go these days, and I couldn't afford it. So I went to Rikers Island. I was forced into a crowded and unsafe intake cell. Even though I was injured, in jail I didn't get the medical treatment I should have received. I spent almost a week in Rikers Island before bail was lowered and I could be released. I was forced to endure the harsh conditions on Rikers Island as an innocent man. I still don't know why I was charged with murder. I believe that law enforcement and the DA's office didn't investigate the case fully. They rushed to judgment and I suffered because of it. Even though the charges were ultimately dropped, they should not have been brought against me to begin with. I am now traumatized from the incident. I am not working because I am terrified for my life that someone in a gang will come after me for revenge. I was injured physically and mentally because of the incident and my unlawful arrest and incarceration. My story is one that should not happen again. Crime does not discriminate on the basis of a political party. It needs to be addressed by law enforcement on the street and by prosecutors in the court. But it has to be aimed at the people committing crime, not an innocent man like me. And the next time an innocent man does nothing but protect their own life in self-defense from a violent attack, they should not be made the villain, but instead treated with care and compassion as the victim.
So why do you think it is that a man who was victimized becomes the criminal? Do you think people that don't want you to exist have sympathy for you? Sorry, but the answer is they don't. Let me stress that. If there's a person who says, I don't want you to exist, and then you say, what you were doing is hurting me, do you think they care? How could they? They don't want you to exist. Your emotions are completely meaningless to them. Which brings me to this article from February 24th, 2017, written by Yuval Noah Harari, The Rise of the Useless Class. Now, this ideas.ted.com article is rather light, but going back about, 6 years, you can see where we've come. Powerful global interests think there are too many of you and you are bad and you shouldn't exist. In fact, 40% of those polls respondents, granted, that's only about, 30 to 27,000 people. It may not be a scientific poll, but I think we see much of the same thing on many of the from the left. They don't like people. They don't want you to be around. So what do you think is going to happen? Yuval Noah Harari writes about how algorithms are giving rise to replacing workers. And how in the Industrial Revolution, many people were displaced, but professions evolved and people took different jobs. And there was always something that someone can do better than an algorithm. He goes on to say that humans are algorithms. We are organic algorithms created through natural selection. And now that we've created computers and computer algorithms, which are much faster and more powerful, humans are becoming obsolete in a certain sense. And he says this will give rise to a useless class of people who they do nothing but exist. But why? Why should resources be expended for people who do nothing? So maybe now you might understand why it is we're seeing mass rioting in Chicago, why it is we're seeing violent crime all over the place, why it is that Democrats don't seem to care. Let me break it down for you. If that 40% number does add up, and it is indicative of what the Democrats are, that means when a Democratic politician rises to the stand and says, I want you to vote for me, he has to pander, or she, to at least 40% of his base who are saying humans should not exist. What does that mean? It means that given enough power, Democrats will keep enacting policies that result in the termination of human life. Maybe not intentionally, but certainly as a byproduct of the policies that these Democrats want. I love this. There's a viral tweet going around where I think it's Germany. They're like, that's that look on your face when you're dismantling nuclear power. And it's like coal power plants produce more radioactive waste than nuclear power plants. People just don't know that, or they don't care, or simply put, they do not want you to be alive anymore. I take a look at like Greta Thunberg, and I think she's more like a useful idiot. She comes out and she says, I will not wait till 2030. I will not wait till 2023. We must stop fossil fuels now. Okay. Do you know what happens if you stop fossil fuels right now? I think within 3 days, 60 million people die. And I think within a couple weeks, you end up with like 1 or 2 billion. Oh boy. Yeah, well, because without fossil fuels, there's no electricity, there's no refrigeration, there's no food manufacturing, and people start starving. Water pumps, liquid pumps and facilities stop pumping because there's no electricity. And the first and scariest thing is typically diabetics who require their insulin to be refrigerated. They go, unfortunately, because insulin's got to be kept cold. And if they can't, there's other ways you can do it. I don't know the exact temperature, but certainly I'd recommend digging a deep hole. If you get low enough, I believe the temperature is around 55 degrees or so. So ice cellars used to be a thing. Go underground, it's a bit cooler, and then you could store things down there, although it may not be cold enough, unfortunately. With a refrigerator, you can keep things around 40 to 50 degrees, and it's a lot harder to do. But that's the scary reality. These policies of getting rid of fossil fuels, it means less people. Now, I personally do believe there can be too many people because I think, obviously, resources are finite. There are some people who think it's impossible, or at the very least, we're nowhere near that threshold. I honestly don't know. What I can tell you is that there are too many useless people. I completely agree with that area of Yuval Noah Harari's assessment. And I think it's a bit of cognitive dissonance among the right to argue that he's wrong. Many of the anti-establishment conspiracy theorist base, many anti-establishment people and conspiracy theorist individuals would point to this statement and say, see, they want you dead. Well, certainly I understand that. But to argue that there aren't useless people, I think it's cognitive dissonance. If you are going to call the woke left a cult, and I'll put it this way. The people who are rioting in Chicago right now, do they serve a purpose? I mean, no, they're just destroying things. You can argue if your intent is to destroy the system, they're serving a purpose. But I do think, based on my worldview, there are many people who do literally nothing and just cause problems, in which case there is a useless class. I don't believe someone like Yuval Noah Harari should be coming in and determining what we do with these people's lives. And I certainly don't think ending anyone's lives is the appropriate response. I think the appropriate response is to build a culture that strives for certain goals, that shares moral values, and then perhaps we can colonize the stars. Perhaps the solution to there being finite resources is, I don't know, space mining or spacefaring, in which case we actually don't have enough people. More people means more specialties, means more technological advancement. I look over at my computer, and it's got these flashing LED lights on it. And these light-emitting diodes, I believe that's what LED stands for, are fascinating to me because they're emitting different colors. We have come up with a process by which we can make a little object emit different colors of light. And it got me thinking about how way back in the day, purple was really hard to come by. In order to make dyes, they would have to get the color from something, say berries or something like that. They would then mash them up, mix them with something, and then put the clothing in it to turn that clothing a certain color. And purple was particularly hard to find. They could do, I think blues were difficult. Red was easy because they'd get berries and stuff like that. Red was relatively easy. Brown was obviously the easiest, but colors were hard. So rich people wore purple because it was like, wow, that one's purple. I can see the wealth on you. And now I look at how easy it is and how we take these things for granted. How, man, imagine getting ice cream. You had to get a bunch of salt, you had to get ice and cream, and then you had to use the salt to create, what is it called? An exothermic reaction, ripping the heat from the cream to rapidly freeze it by putting salt and the ice together, how does it work? The salt lowers the freezing point of the ice, which causes the ice to rapidly absorb ambient heat in order to convert it back into a liquid. It's amazing how that works, isn't it? I could be totally wrong about this. My understanding is that in order for ice to become water, it has to absorb a certain amount of energy from the atmosphere so that its molecules can move a bit around a bit. The chemical reaction with salt makes the ice want to liquefy, but that pulls heat into the ice, making it liquid. It's weird, isn't it? And if the cream is next to it, the heat is ripped from the cream, freezing it rather quickly. Funny how that works, I guess. Now we just put in a box where now we have machines that do it. Now we have big vats that do it. You churn the cream as it's being frozen by an air conditioning system. We've made it so much easier. And in a sense, it's actually kind of harder. Putting salt and ice in a bucket and then putting cream around it, not that hard, but you got to put human labor into it. With more people, we've created way more specialties, meaning a single individual can hyper-focus on one element of one chemical reaction. And then with all those people combined, focusing on various different things, you get an airplane or a spaceship. No one person could make a laptop. It is all the different specialties. That's why we need more people. Elon Musk is certainly right about that. If we want to travel to the stars, we need more people. But I'll put it simply. I think we have enough people. I do. I think we have too many people. I think in terms of, let me clarify, in terms of reaching the stars and doing amazing things. The problem is we have weak men, and I mean that in the human sense, because there's weak women. This produced a couple generations of very weak individuals, which brings me to likely what I think these, World Economic Forum Davos types really do want. And what do they want? They want to get rid of stupid people, the useless people. If you're smart enough, they don't care about you. You're fine. It looks like they want to engage in artificial selection, eugenics, as it were. There's an interesting conundrum in that. So I leave it to you to answer below what you think. Think about it this way. Thanos, he wants to eliminate half of all life in the universe because resources are finite. It makes very little sense, to be honest, because they'll just keep reproducing. It doesn't change anything about the culture. Now, if Thanos said, we're going to eliminate half of all life, but only the lesser half, the ones that do less work or aren't as intelligent and aren't as responsible, I'd say, oh, okay, the end result is the other half flourish and then maintain that level of responsibility. This is the idea, I suppose, among these World Economic Forum types, that if they create a crisis that kills people or harms them or limits their reproduction and then tell you exactly what they're doing, if you walk into the mousetrap, then you deserved to have walked into the mousetrap. That seems to be their worldview. The early bird gets the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese, as it were. So I guess the idea as it's stated among many of these people is they can set the bear trap. They can tell you, we've set a bear trap, but don't worry, you'll be fine. Walk the path. If you do not pay attention to where you step, that's your own fault. You knew there was a bear trap. We told you it was there. I think another way to look at it would be they've set bear traps all over the path, and there are people standing around saying the path is unsafe, please be careful. And many of these people say, you're just some random guy, you're stupid. I'm going to walk the bear path anyway, or walk the hiking path and step into the bear traps. The argument is, in the end, if people who aren't smart enough to do their research, if people who are disinterested and say, I don't want to pay attention, choose not to, and then they either sterilize themselves or don't have kids or abort their kids, in 20, 30, 40 years' time, there will be less of these people. It's a pressure system. That's why I've said, as bad as you may think it is, the end result is just conservatives winning. Because the people who want to remove people are. But conservatives are having kids. As for Hank Green, I don't think you should be surprised to see this. These people don't pay attention. They have no idea what they're talking about. And it's not shocking to any one of you who listens to this show. We pay attention. And so I have to wonder. Because Alex Jones told me this. Check out the Culture War podcast, youtube.com/Timcast. Alex Jones mentioned that he was told by someone that they want there to be a means by which information is conveyed to smarter people, and stupider people would reject it. I'm paraphrasing, but the general idea is the bear trap analogy, that if YouTube allows a channel like mine to exist and you seek out the information and find it, they're happy you did because you deserve it. But if you are not smart enough to truly understand, or you are so blind you will march with the lemmings off the cliff, then they think you deserve that too. It's a scary thought. I just think people are worth more than that, and people can become what they need to become. And this idea of just purging people that are ignorant doesn't make sense to me. I'm not saying I know for sure that's what they're doing, but I will tell you this. Whether there is a conspiracy or not, one thing is true. The people who abort their kids and sterilize themselves or their children, their genes are going to be removed from the gene pool. That's it, period. End of story. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not making an emotional argument. I'm saying outright that's what will happen because it's what they're doing. And if conservatives keep having kids, then the future is going to be conservative. That's all. So I have to wonder. If it isn't intentional, does it even matter? Well, I can tell you this, Hank Green. If 40% of your audience thinks that people should not be around anymore, what do you think that means? Do you think these people are going to be having kids? Do you think these people are going to be having abortions? Do you think these people will sterilize themselves or their kids? They're much more likely to. That's the left. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.